welcome to Broken Entertainment. So I'm finally doing my long-delayed Encanto review. I'll try to keep this kind of spoiler-free, but I'm not going to make any promises on this one. And when I saw the movie, my first response was like, this kind of looks familiar. And I have here on the screen Moana, which was made, oh gosh, what, 2015, 2017, somewhere in that range, and Encanto, and they look the same. And that's my biggest critique of this movie is Disney, and it's really not a critique of Encanto as much as it's a critique of Disney's animation studio in general. They're not changing. They're not evolving. They're not developing new animation and new technologies. They have cool water effects in Moana and Raya and the Last Dragon, and they've got some sparkly effects in Encanto. But the look is kind of reminds me of the 90s, but in the 90s you had developments going forward in at least some areas, you know. Yes, the style was similar, but you had advances in color, you had advances in voice acting, you had advances in the songs, you had advances in ultimately the visual appearance overall by the time you hit Pocahontas, which is a visually beautiful piece of animation. And here, you don't have any evolution from Moana to Encanto. And there's several movies in between, of course. But there's nothing that, when you see it, it's not like, oh, wow, what a stunning evolution of design. It's like, guys, you got stuck in the 90s in this same style, but you were producing amazing films. So you kind of got away with it. And now you're doing the same thing. Moana and Encanto look almost identical technologically speaking, and they've got tons of money poured into their animation studio. I expect more from a company like that, where I expect major design developments over time. And I don't see it. It's not that Encanto doesn't look good, it looks great. But it looks like Moana. And it's been, how many years? So where is your evolution? Where is your advancement? That was the first thing. But Encanto is one of those movies that, to me, I kind of look at it and I'm like, I watched it and I'm like, it exists. It's not offensive. It's not terrible. It's not frustrating like Raya and the Last Dragon was. It's got stuff in it that's actually pretty good. But it doesn't last. It doesn't have that feeling that certain Disney movies have. Moana, I think, remains their last great film in terms of animation. Moana broke ground. Moana advanced technologies. Moana had a great story with excellent world building, great voice acting. But it also set trends that have continued, and you see that in Encanto as well, where the villain in most Disney movies now, again, animation Disney, is just kind of this thing. There's not really a defined villain in any of these movies. The closest Moana comes was, what's his name? I'm blanking on his name now, the giant crab. He was a villain. He wasn't the main villain, but he was a villain, and he was very memorable, aside from the fact that I can't remember his name, but that's not the film's fault. That's me not being good with names. Then you get to Raya and the Last Dragon, and what's the monster? Smoked things. They don't even have a personality by the time you get to Raya and the Last Dragon. It's smoke. And in Encanto, the villain is internal family discord. So they're kind of nebulous. There's literally smoke in one of them. It's just the bad guy. There's just clouds of smoke. And that's one of the things I think has kept them from really reaching that 90s level of excellence in their animated movies, because they're not, ultimately, there's no villain to play against. There's no memorable villain. You think of the 90s movies, okay? Aladdin, you have Jafar. A lot of them you can just name them off the top of your head, right? Pocahontas, you have the colonial guy. Again, I'm forgetting names because I'm terrible at names, but you remember him. You have, oh man, I'm terrible with names today. Octopus Lady in, um, in Little Mermaid. I don't know why I'm forgetting these names. Scar, of course, in The Lion King. And what do you have in this era? Name one impressive villain. Name one movie where you unless you're having memory issues all of a sudden. Name one movie where you name the movie and you think of the villain. Oh, Hunchback of Notre Dame too also has a classic villain, but and Cruella de Vil, of course, in 101 Dalmatians. You can go on and on and on, right? With all those classic Disney movies, every single one has an immediately identifiable villain that almost comes to the top of your head as soon as you name the movie. And I mean, Scar, to me, in The Lion King, may be one of the greatest Disney villains of all time. Moana lacks that. Encanto lacks that. Raya and the Last Dragon lack that. Now, I do think at the end of the day, Moana becomes a classic, if it isn't already. Because you do have the giant crab, at least, in Moana. And it's kind of that first movie where you see the amazing water effects, and it's got the rock, and you have this stuff that you think of immediately, right? And it's not a song. Frozen has a song, obviously, everybody remembers. Encanto has a song everybody remembers, which is an important component of Disney animated movie. But they lack that villain connection. They lack that thing that the characters play off of, and that's what Encanto is really lacking. Now, I do think it does an amazing job of actually using that family discord as the antagonist. I don't think it's a good stand-in for an actual antagonist. Think somebody prodding at those cracks in the family foundation would have been awesome, rather than just the existence of a member of the family that doesn't have the same abilities as everybody else, so they kind of argue. And also the underlying family dynamic that was there that was causing issues already. It works very well in the way that they did it, but I think you really elevate the movie with a proper antagonist who kind of sees those cracks before the family does and prods at it and kind of weasels through the family dynamic until they can kind of break it apart. But you don't have that, so it's this kind of moment at the end of the movie, and it's not that climactic. It's well written, I think. That family dynamic is very well written throughout the movie. And you can see things building up, and you're like, this is not going to be good. Very well done. Each character, there's a lot of characters in this movie. Each member of the family, distinct, interesting personalities. Very interesting magical abilities, but nothing to go against other than one another. And it's not invalid as a form of storytelling, but it follows this Disney trend of the last, 10 plus years of really lacking something. And Encanto lacks something. Now, it does much better than Raya and the Last Dragon because they're not fighting literal smoke. There's an actual dynamic there. There's something compelling and well written with all these characters and the way they interact and the way the family's built, and it's very, very relatable. Amazing job in that department. I think the writing team on Encanto did a fantastic job with what they were doing. And their world building is much, much better than Raya and the Last Dragon. Raya and the Last Dragon was like a mishmash of random Asian cultures just kind of thrown together, and there were dragons, and stuff fell apart because of people are greedy. This has a lot of the world building presented to you in compelling form in the opening song. And you immediately, after this song, which is, probably 5 minutes long, a very interesting song, compelling, grabs your attention, it's fast, it's got a good pace to it, And it's like I said, it's like immediately when the movie opens, and it introduces every character and their abilities and the world that you're in, all of it. Boom, 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 boom. Very tightly written, very well done. There's not a ton of exposition in this movie. When it's presented, it makes perfect sense. It's done in an interesting and compelling way. You get more exposition from the matriarch of the family later on, and that is very compellingly done as well in a different and more somber way. But it doesn't have. Think of most great stories. Stories you remember. And we'll talk about genre stories. This is a genre story. When you name most of them, okay, and I'll try to remember villain names, okay? Don't blame what I'm listing. If I forget some, it's just me. Lord of the Rings, Sauron. Hobbit, Smaug. Or sorry, Smaug. I don't like that pronunciation, so I'm going to call him Smaug. Star Wars, Darth Vader, the Emperor. Star Trek, Khan. Warhammer 40k, Horus. Chaos, Abaddon. Lord of the Ring, not Lord of the Rings, sorry, Game of Thrones, the TV show, because I don't know enough about the books. The TV show had the White Walkers. I already named the Disney stuff. There's always that antagonist. It doesn't have to be a villain, just somebody there to poke, right? To antagonize, to be the opposite of the hero or the main character. And those don't exist lately in Disney movies. You know, at the end of the day, what do you remember about Raya and the Last Dragon? My frustration. That's what I remember. Moana, I think the two main voice actors, The Rock and I forget her name, for Moana, really carry that movie. And it's got some kind of classic, compelling scenes to it. You know, there's a couple of side villains along the way that are very memorable. You know, you got the coconut guys, you got the big crab. Man, his name is just on the tip of my tongue. That's really annoying. You know, oh, Doctor Who, Daleks, Cybermen, The Master. And even if you go into literature, Moby Dick, The Whale, you know, Dracula, Dracula. When you go into these, there's something there. It's not just the story. It's not just the main character. It's something antagonizing that's memorable and compelling that all these movies have lacked. You know, Raya and the Last Dragon, obviously, I think, and I keep picking at it, but it's the worst example, okay? Frozen 2 had some kind of mist thing going on, too. And I get that they're trying to do something different, but I don't think it works. The closest it comes to working, I think, without a true antagonist, even a side antagonist, well, we won't count Moana because they've got side antagonists. The closest it coming to works is Encanto. It's not enough to make it kind of that classic that it could have been. But again, world building is great. Emotional writing is great. The characters are great. They're all interesting. They have a believable family dynamic that plays well into the culture. The magic is interesting. It's limited because it's not actually what the movie's about. The movie is about people fitting in. The movie is about people feeling pressure. It's about these faces we try to give to the world and to our own families sometimes that really put the screws on us emotionally. And that's all very interesting, but if you're not going to develop the technology, if you're not going to have something there needs to be that antagonist. Even if they're not a villain, like I said, just prod. And that's the biggest weakness of the movie. It's not the only weakness of the movie. The songs are memorable. You've got everybody with children running around singing "We Don't Talk About Bruno," and that's fine. It lacks that classical identifier. You know, I watched Moana, and man, I have a video. I broke down Moana. And there is storytelling in the background of Moana. They build her up in the beginning. In every song, you see an ability that she has. You see something in every scene that she's capable of doing before she goes off on her adventure. that is paid off throughout the adventure. And that is not really in Encanto to the same degree either. When I watched Moana for the first time, I was blown away. And I watched Encanto and I'm like, it's there. It exists. I'd watch it again. I wouldn't watch Raya and the Last Dragon again if I didn't have to. If somebody drags me to see it, I guess I'll see it, but that's about the only way. But I do think if you want to study how to write character dynamics, rewatch and rewatch and rewatch Encanto. It's basically a class in how to do it. That's how good I think that aspect of the film is. Visually, it looks like all the other Disney movies since Moana. You can see it here. I'm not going to play clips because Disney gets really pissy about it. Yeah, these people got away with it, but I'm just not going to deal with it. It's, at the end of the day, what do you have to say about it? There's some songs you remember, aspects of the story are well written, and then there's nothing that immediately just boom. And that climactic moment at the end of the story, first of all, you see it coming a mile away. Second of all, it's like there's no moment of there's a moment of everything falling apart, which is well done. But there's no moment of like recombination. I mean, it happens, but there's nothing that stands out. There's nothing that's the climax of the story. It's like the climax of the story is everything falling apart. Well, the climax of the story is supposed to be bringing everything back together. And it's just, everybody works out their problem. Kind of reminds me of Wonder Woman 84 in that regard. That's the only comparison I'm going to make it to it in Wonder Woman 84, because Wonder Woman 84 is a far, far inferior movie to Encanto. But Wonder Woman 84 kind of does the same thing with its ending, where it's like, meh. And same thing with Raya and the Last Dragon. Everybody just, I have faith. And then the enemy goes away. And I think if you had that antagonist there prodding at the cracks, you could have had that moment. And ultimately, that's what takes this movie from a potential classic, which I think it had the potential for, and drops it down. Now, culturally speaking, I don't know a lot about the Colombian culture. I'm not going to pretend to know a lot about the Colombian culture. It looks like it was pretty well researched in that regard. I'm sure they did a fine job. I think they do a good job of tying the family into the town around them. And you definitely get that family is central, family is multi-generational kind of thing from this movie. And there's nothing wrong with Disney going to different cultures and highlighting different cultures, right? They, I think, generally do a good job when they do that without signaling virtue. They just do it as, hey, this story takes place here. Hey, this story takes place there. That's fine. That's great. I think it's actually the live action adaptations of these movies where they've really screwed the pooch on that. In the original animations and these animations too, they're just in different places, and that's great. Exposure to other cultures is a good thing. And we talk about, hey, stop shoehorning, stop race swapping, stop gender swapping, make original characters. Well, here they are. Think of Disney what you will for a lot of other things, but at least in the animation studio, for the most part, they've done a good job of it. Is it free of everything? No. I actually think Encanto is free of everything. It's just a story. Raya and the Last Dragon felt ham-fisted. Instead of settling on an Asian culture, they try to just kind of throw everything in there that they can, and then they cast people specifically because of their race, and it's just like, But Encanto just feels natural as a story. There's nothing that really felt ham-fisted in it to me. You don't get that I'm being taught how to think scenario coming out of it. So would I recommend it? Yeah. It's fine. If you have kids, they'll like it. Whether they remember it in 15 years, I don't know. But it's a fine movie. It's well written for the most part. It's concise, has good world building. So, yeah, it exists. It's fine. It has good components. It just doesn't wrap up. It's just missing that element. So let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you liked the movie, if you didn't like the movie, if you think I'm crazy that I didn't see virtue signaling, whatever. If you liked the video, please hit the like button. If you are not subscribed, please consider subscribing. Ring the bell for notifications, and I will see you next time.